All right, so we're gonna get started now. It's 10:34, so 4 minutes past the hour where we are scheduled to start. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Xiomara Palma. I'm the founder and CEO of Solvit HR. Along with myself today, I have my co-host, Rick Hernandez,
Good
who is
morning, everyone.
joining today. And I will kick it off and hand it off to Rick to introduce himself briefly.
Thank you, Xiomara. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I was I've been involved in safety and human resources in California for
Do you
at
want
least
to?
the past 25
Okay.
years.
Otherwise, I can put it on my
And
phone and listen through my headbuds. I don't want to
Oh, if we can ask everyone to mute themselves.
disturb you guys.
oh, hold on, yeah.
You want me to turn it up?
I'm getting a little feedback, so if we can ask everyone to mute
Yeah.
themselves,
Yes.
we will allow for questions and comment online at the end of the presentation. But if you can just mute yourselves for now, that'd be great, so we don't get feedback and we're able to get through the webinar. Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's been about 25 years that I've been in California working in different companies in human resources and safety. I've also been a loss control consultant for big carrier, workers' compensation carrier, now known as Ameritrust. And for the past about 10 years, I've been a licensed commercial insurance broker. So when it comes to safety, when it comes to human resources, that's most of my background. And what I like to do is I like to now when I'm dealing with my clients, I give them the insurance perspective from the buyer, from the carrier, and also from the broker side. So that's what I use my background for to better make the customer service experience for my clients a lot better.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for that introduction. And a little bit about myself. For those of you who are just joining in, I'm the founder and CEO of Solvit HR. I've been doing human resources for 17 years now, and I'm loving every second of it. I'm very passionate about what I do. I provide HR, payroll, and safety support for small businesses, and also an advisor for the SBA through the Small Business Development Center. I'm happy to be here with you all. A little bit about my journey, what led me to work with small businesses was years back. I worked my way up through corporate, and the bulk of my experience was in the healthcare industry. And eventually I decided to venture into other industries, just to see what else was out there. And I ended up working for a consulting firm that provided payroll HR support for small businesses. And there I really got to see a day in the life of a small business owner. And was such a shocker, right? Such a difference from working for corporate or working for large organizations that had a full HR department, at least 5 to 20, 30 people. And just seeing small businesses struggle with HR. I never in my career had seen so many businesses get hit with claims, and with labor commissioner claims, and workers' compensation claims, lawsuits, and all for things that could have been easily prevented, right? Things that at a large company would never hit because they already had an HR department. So I decided to venture on my own, and really I felt a calling to support small businesses and to just kind of be that, that person that had their back, right? Because I just felt like this is so unfair that they're having to go to the labor board, over, this like small dispute, and now they're losing thousands of dollars or having to settle with an employee for something that could have been just easily prevented if they had the processes and the knowledge in place to do that. So that was my calling, and that's why I founded Solvit HR. And hence, I hope I'm able to provide that assistance and guidance for you all that you can implement some things in your businesses and not be those businesses that end up at the labor board or getting lawsuits, because it's so important, right, to protect your business from all angles. Before we begin, this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered. The slides will also be available in email to everyone who did register. And if you just logged in right now, I know if you came in late, feel free to introduce yourselves, network with each other, tell us a little bit about your business, where you're joining us from, what you're looking to get out. And at the end, we're going to open it up for Q&A. But if you do have questions as we go through the slides, I encourage you to drop those in the chat. Rick and I will be alternating and checking for those questions as we go through them. The intended audience, because I don't like to waste anyone's time, so I want to make sure everybody's in the right place. If not, I like to leave you with the gift of time. The intended audience for the webinar is for small business owners about to hire their first employee in the US, or those that have already been established, already have a team, but do not have HR or safety support. Businesses that are preparing to hire a team in the near future, or those that have high turnover, chronic absenteeism, and chronic workers' comp claims. We hope that we're able to provide some tips for you as well, so you are welcome to stay as well. This webinar is not for those who do not care about HR or safety compliance, those who do not aim to become employers of choice, and are not interested in protecting their business from employee lawsuits and claims. All right, a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. We have already done welcome. I hope everyone's introducing themselves in the chat. Also, we'll be covering HR safety mistakes and giving you some solutions and technical steps that you can implement in your business. And at the end, we'll wrap it up for Q&A. And I do hope that everyone has some questions. Obviously, I like for this webinar to be interactive. I don't want anyone to get board, but I would like for everyone to just participate. Do drop your questions in the chat. And then if you don't want to do that, then feel free to bring your questions and come on, unmute yourselves at the end of the presentation. We'll be taking on those questions. A brief disclaimer before we get started. As many of you know, human resources and safety are ever evolving disciplines, and the information that we cover with you all today is intended for informational purposes only and not intended as legal advice. Right? If you do have a particular situation where you do need more guidance, I encourage you to, we'll have the option to schedule a one-on-one consultation, but if there is something that is more of a legal realm, I encourage you to seek legal counsel. But again, the information is intended for informational purposes and giving you some tips to implement in your businesses. All right, without any further ado, let's dive right in. Mistake number one: inadequate hiring process and onboarding. And when I looked up some of the stats related to this mistake, it was just mind-blowing, mind-blowing what I found. And I wanted to sort of pick your brain a little bit about this. So I'll ask you to participate and drop some answers, your guess in the chat. So what percentage of turnover do you think is due to bad hiring decisions? Drop your guess in the chat right now. And I'll check in with Rick in a
Okay.
couple seconds.
We have 25% so far.
25%. Any other guesses? What percentage of turnover is due to bad hiring decisions? What are your thoughts? What do you think?
Come on, Jennifer, Kai, Andrea. What do you guys think? 32%.
32%. Okay.
33, I'm sorry. 25 and 33% so far.
25 and 33%.
100%.
100%. Okay. All right. I want to hear more. I want to hear more why you think that number. But
And then
actually,
50%.
sadly to say, that is pretty close. The person that gets 100%, you get
we have 10% as well.
10%. It is actually 80%. So 80% of turnover is due to bad hiring decisions. That's a pretty big number. Now for the second guess, I'll share with you guys, or the second step, I'll share with you guys and have you guess again, if you can drop some numbers in the chat. But what percentage of employees do you think quit within the first 90 days of hire? So we've already made the bad hiring decision to hire someone. Now they're within their intro period. What percentage of employees do you think will quit within the first 90 days of hire? Drop it in the chat. Any numbers?
15%, 40%.
15, 40. Okay. Those are some pretty good guesses. And I actually like to say that it is right in between. So 29% of employees quit within the first 90 days of hire. That's a pretty big number, right? So if we already made, as hiring managers or as business owners made a bad decision, right, to hire people, and then now at 29% of the people we hired, so if we hired 10 people, likely about 3 people are going to quit within those first 90 days of hire, right? And then we're going to be back at a cycle again to try to fill in those positions. And when we consider that turnover cost ranges from 33 to 50% of an employee's salary, this depending on the level of experience, the level of skill for that position, right? Obviously, the higher the skill, the higher the cost it's going to be. But I know that certainly no business owner has 33 to 50% of an employee's salary to just throw down the drain, right? Every 90 days. So this is definitely a mistake we cannot afford to make. And where I see the mistake made is in 3 different places. So number 1 is the job ad. Most of the time, we don't have a job ad that really speaks to the job requirements, to the skills required to be successful in the job, and to let people know what the qualifications and be clear about the job expectations. So perfect example I'll share with you all. I recently spoke to a business owner who has a tutoring business, and he hired a tutor and was not happy with the tutor because he said, now I hire this tutor and she just does the bare minimum. She's like on her phone all the time. I'm looking for someone that's like going above and beyond, and it's just she's not she's not interacting with the students, and she literally just goes and like talks to them and helps them solve their homework, their math problems, and that's that, right? So my first question was, what is your job ad? Share your job ad with me. And when I took a look at that job ad, it just made perfect sense, right? Why he had gotten what he had gotten, because he wanted a unicorn, but like we crafted the job for like, the entire zoo to apply, basically, right? We didn't narrow it down. So, and his job ad said something like, just very simple, like, hiring a tutor to work from this time to that time, and must be good working with children. And that was literally it, right? But what I heard from him was that, someone that was a go-getter or a self-starter, motivated, was important for him, but that was not on the job ad. Someone that like listened to direction, went above and beyond, and had like, good interpersonal skills to interact with the students was important to him, but that was not on the job ad, right? And then, his complaint about like this person always being on the phone. Well, did we have a policy that we share with them, like when we onboarded them, that was against company policy? No, right? He didn't have a policy. He didn't have a handbook. That already was, well, no wonder why we are where we are. So, needless to say, I helped him craft a job ad that actually got the candidate or the applicant that he wanted. But most of the time that is, number 1 where I see the mistake. And then also I see the mistake when we are interviewing for positions, right? So if we are interviewing someone and we don't have a job description that tells us the minimum job requirements, criteria, qualifications that they must have during the interview process, we're not going to know. We're not going to know what to ask, right? Because we don't have it laid out for us. You know, a lot of times, and I get it, we get busy, you know, we're running a business, we are wearing so many different hats. But when we are interviewing someone, you know, that's one of the most critical decisions that you'll make for your business, because this person can either help you win or they can become a liability for you. So, you know, taking your time in the front end is super duper important. So a lot of times when we don't have a job description, we'll ask questions like, walk me through your resume. Tell me about yourself. What do you know about my industry? Um, you know, how did you get started in this job? Things like that, that don't really tell you about that person's ability to be successful in that job. It doesn't tell you anything about their skills, doesn't tell you anything about their experience, but we're asking the questions because, again, we are not prepared, right? We don't have the job description. And then the third thing where I see the mistake is on the onboarding process, right? So once we've actually interviewed someone and we're ready to onboard them, a lot of the times we don't have an onboarding process, right? What does that look like? An orientation, right? We don't have, again, for that client that reached out to me with the tutoring, he didn't have a cell phone policy that he walked this employee through, right? That was important for him. So with the onboarding, you definitely want to have a process in place that is going to teach the employee how to be successful in the job. It's going to teach them what the culture is, what your expectations are. So having those steps having those processes in place is really going to give you an edge and really going to help you be successful with managing your employees and hiring the right team, right? So number one is developing that job description, because the job description is the most important document in the entire employment relationship. Let me say that one more time for those of you who may have missed it. The job description is the most important document in the entire employment relationship. Why? Because it essentially is the reason why you even have an employee anyway, right? It's telling them, it's almost like a contract, right? You have a need for someone to perform X, Y, Z. You are letting them know what they need to perform, and they are hence interviewing and shaking hands with you and agreeing that they are going to perform this job. Down the line, you're also going to evaluate this person on that job. That job description is going to be the foundation for you to develop your performance evaluation. It's also going to be the foundation for, like, you know, if someone should become disabled and not able to perform some of the job duties, your job description should be able to say which physical demands are required for the job, right? And from there, you're going to be able to determine if you're able to accommodate someone. Again, your job description is going to help you craft your job ad. It's going to help you prepare a questionnaire for your interview for when you hire the employee. So the job description is the most important document. If you don't have a job description from the beginning, it's almost like you're setting yourself up for failure when it comes to people management, because that job description, that just tells you everything, right? So we can't expect employees to know exactly, you know, what goes in our mind for them to be able to perform the job, right? Some people may think, okay, well, you know, that like that employee, that tutor, right? They just need someone to help kids with homework, then I'm just going to help them with homework. And then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to be on my phone. That's, you know, sometimes like common sense things are really not common and not so common, right? You know what they say about common sense. So making sure you have that process is really going to help you assess the skills and make sure that person is a culture fit for your business as well, right? So again, making sure you have that job description is the most important thing. And when it comes to onboarding, right, making sure that once you do have the employee onboarded, you have all the equipment and access that they need to hit the ground running, right? To be able to go and you review key policies and better yet, an employee handbook. If you have an employee handbook, you provide them an overview of your company mission, vision, and values. That tells them like what the target is, right? What they should aim for. Everybody in your team should be aiming for that same target. And you should also let them know how their contribution helps the team move forward to that target. And again, set those expectations from the beginning and help them be successful. All right, I know I said a lot. So Rick, I'm going to hand it off to you for mistake number 2.
Thank you, Fiumana. Okay, so when it comes to mistake number 2, what happens is sometimes small business owners, when they're starting out and or have a few employees, they sometimes, especially if it's like family members that are working with them in a small restaurant, let's say, or a different type of setting, not having a workers' comp insurance policy. That's one of the big things that sometimes small businesses may not may overlook and think that that's for bigger companies, but actually California requires since 1913, so it's over 100 years. California requires workers' comp coverage if you have even one or more employees, right? And so failure to have that coverage can lead to fines, right? So should you have an employee injury or illness in the workplace that leads to medical treatment being needed or temporary disability payments because the person cannot work due to a back injury, let's say, then if there is a failure of workers' comp coverage, that can lead to fines that sometimes can start as low as 10,000, can go over 100,000, depending on the amount of employees that are not covered. So how do you solve that mistake? So if you look at the next slide here, we have the criteria that we're going to consider for workers' compensation. So if you have between 1 and 10 employees, then and so a small business, about 300,000, less than 300,000 in estimated annual payroll amongst your employees. A lot of people don't know this, but you could actually get a micro workers comp policy through your personal auto agent. Let's say if they're State Farm, sometimes different, Allstate. Let's say you go to their local office, and in the state of California, we are licensed. If we are commercial insurance brokers, it falls under property and casualty. So we're able to transact workers' comp insurance, but also home and auto, right? So if you have a small business, that's where you may want to go. You don't have to go to a big brokerage. But let's say that you start getting a little bigger, you have over 10 employees, and um and so when it comes to, oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So when you have over 10 employees, and let's say you have over about 300,000 in estimated annual payroll, then that's where you should contact a commercial insurance broker, contact a brokerage, right? And so after so once you do go through that process, you contact the broker, and then it costs nothing to get a quote. So then you should give them all the information. They'll fill out an application for you. The turnaround may take anywhere between a week, maybe a week and a half, right? Depending on what type of work you do and if there are additional questions that you may have to answer. But then you could get presented with a quote. And sometimes they could the payment can be broken up amongst even monthly payments, or sometimes it's monthly reporting based on if your work is seasonal. So you can request, well, right now maybe in December, January, I don't have much payroll, but you still have to report then, let's say, very low payroll or zero payroll. But then you start having payroll in February, March, April, those months, then that's when you report and you fill out the workers' comp report and then pay your premium as you go. So after you get that workers' comp policy, a lot of times, especially if you're leasing, you're building and or working with additional businesses, they're going to require a certificate of insurance, right? And a certificate of insurance is basically proof of the policy that you have, the name of the company that is insuring you, and the dates of your policy. It'll also show the limits, right? So so again, this is something that you will want after you bind a policy, and you can show that to either your business partners keeping your records and or anybody that may require it, like a landlord or any other business associate that needs it. So that's how you would solve that when it comes to workers' compensation. So back to you, Xiomara.
All right, thanks, Rick. Now for mistake number 3, lacking an updated handbook. So as we saw from mistake number 1, an employee handbook is kind of tied to onboarding, right? So when you have employees or getting ready to hire employees, you want to make sure that you do have policies in place that let the employees know what the expectations are, what's allowed and not allowed in your business or your company. And so one great way to do that is to develop an employee handbook and making sure this handbook is up to date as well, because the employee
Good morning,
handbook,
Jamie, how are you?
if I can ask everyone to mute themselves, please.
Oh,
No,
There
there
we
it is.
go. There we go. All right, so the employee handbook basically is almost like a Bible for your business. It lets the employees know what to expect and what not to expect. But the most important part is that the employee handbook is there to protect your business, right? How so? Say, for example, the example I already gave you, the client that had the tutor and she was always on her phone. Let's say that this business owner fired her for being on the phone all the time, right? But he didn't have an employee handbook, or he didn't have a policy that stated that he could fire her, or being on the phone could lead up to termination. And now let's say that this employee was of a certain gender or race, or the what they consider now protected category, right, for discrimination purposes. So let's say that this employee got fired and now she's suing because she thinks now that she's being retaliated against, or she's being fired because she's female or she's of a certain race or whatever it may be. Having that policy in place would have protected this business owner, because he would have been able to say, no, I already have a policy, you signed off on it, you know that this is the expectation, and I'm just enforcing my policy. You being of a certain race or gender, whatever category, she may throw their way, has nothing to do with me enforcing my policy and being able to do that. But because he didn't have that, now he might be able to be dragged into a claim or into a lawsuit, right? That could have been prevented. So that's how an employee handbook is there to protect your business. It's there to let the employee know what the job expectations are, but it's also there to protect your business from any potential lawsuits, any claims. And it's also there to communicate and educate the employee about their rights and benefits, right? Any benefits you may provide to the employees should be covered on the employee handbook, and you should be able to obtain an acknowledgement, right? Not only having the handbook, but also having the employees sign off that they have read and then they have understood the policies, and they know that any questions they may have, they can ask a supervisor, and they can also always refer to the handbook, and you reserve the right to update it or change the policies at any time, and it is their obligation to make sure that they are keeping up with that. So that's the best policy, because when, knock on wood, right? I don't wish this upon anyone, but the times I've had to be in front of a judge or in front of the labor commissioner or the labor board, one of the first questions they ask is, the employees say, well, I got fired, blah, 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 for all these things. And then the business will say, well, we have, we enforce our policy, or we have this, we have that. It was not, due to what they're claiming, it was due to a different reason. The first question they'll ask is, do you have a policy? What's the policy? And the second question they'll ask is, did the employee know about this policy? So there you'll be able to show your handy dandy employee acknowledgement of the handbook and or the policies that shows proof that this person did know about the policy and they just violated a company rule, or it was a violation of company policy. So that's how the employee handbook can protect your business, preventing it from any claims, or protecting it from any claims or lawsuits that may come your way from employees. And definitely you do not want to be in front of like a judge at any point. So you want to keep all your profits for your business and not at the labor commissioner's office or a lawsuit, settling a lawsuit, or with attorney's fees, for sure. So now I kick it back to you, Rick, for mistake number 4.
Okay, thanks, Yamada. When it comes to mistake number 4, it depends on sometimes the size of your company. If you're starting out, you may see safety as one of the last things on your list. But when it comes to a company that already has a set number of employees and is growing, that is something that definitely you want to keep in mind, depending on the type of industry that you're in. Now, here's the thing: regardless of what you do, whether you provide a service or a product, if you're, let's say, building homes, you're selling cars, you're providing training and consulting services, right? Any business that you run, if you're a restaurant, if you're a hotel, any business that you run always wants to focus at least on 2 things, which is having a lot of production, right? You want to produce a lot of your product or service to increase your profit. And then number 2, you usually want to focus on quality, right? Because the better product or service that you provide, then it leads to higher reviews and then more clients or more customers. Now, a lot of times the safety is something that is not necessarily seen as important, but since 1991, Cal OSHA, which is in charge of safety in the state of California, has required that all employers in California, even if you have 1 employee or more, you need to have what's known as a safety program, sometimes referred to as an IIPP, and so an injury and illness prevention plan. And so there are different ways you could either get it downloaded through Cal OSHA's website. Sometimes there are consultants that can help you develop yours, or if you're buying insurance from a commercial insurance brokerage, sometimes that will we provide that for our clients, for example. So regardless of how you get it, whether you download it yourself, whether a consultant helps you, or the brokerage that you're working with gives it to you, you still have to work with it. And so if you look at the next slide, and you go over the importance of safety to your company, it's important to start by creating a safety culture, right? Let's say that you're in the office. Well, that's a very low risk industry, but there are still some things you might want to let people know that they need to stretch in their breaks. When they come back from breaks, they should stretch, especially if they're on the computer a lot. Eye strain. You might want to help them with getting a good screen for their monitor, things like that. But if you're dealing with a restaurant, well, of course, there's sharp objects, there's heat, there's slips and falls that could happen. So creating a safety culture is one where you let the employee know that you care about not only their work but their safety, right? And so it's important to do the right thing for your employees. Also, California requires all employers to have a workers' comp uh, policy, but also a safety plan, which is, we mentioned earlier, an injury and illness prevention plan. Within that injury and illness prevention plan, there's a component that's really important, which is training, right? So training helps prevent claims, but um, if you do have one, you also have to have a plan. Depending on the size of your company, you want to work with a clinic near your area that is part of your insurance company's network, so that if you do have to send someone to get medical treatment, that you know exactly where you're going to send them. Especially also if it's after hours on weekends, you want to know what their policy is, because what you don't want is you don't want to send someone unnecessarily to the emergency room, right? That would be the last resort. Yeah, I know it sounds kind of unusual, but when it comes to workers' compensation and safety for a business, that normally should be the last resort. If you have a clinic that could, for different reasons, one, the cost can go real high. The employee can sometimes wait for many hours before they're treated because they have to be triaged as opposed to other people that are in that emergency room. So it's better to have a plan on how you're going to deal with claims. And obviously, if you improve your safety, you have your plan in writing, you do your training, then that's going to lower overall your workers' comp insurance costs. If there's some of you that have already had businesses in the past for many years, you understand that the state of California has what's known as an experience modification. That is it's like your safety report card. Based on that number, that's going to determine if you've had several claims or whatever. It's going to determine your insurance, your workers' comp insurance costs for the following years. So it's something that, of course, not just focus on production and quality, but you want to focus on safety as well. And since the beginning, you want to already, as it says on the bottom here, it really starts with you, right? If you're a safe person, or if you tell someone, hey, I want you to wear your protective equipment, your personal protective equipment, let's say your glasses, your goggles, gloves, if you're cutting something, but but then every now and then, let's say you own a restaurant and you tell your employees, I want you to have your apron, your gloves that are, cut resistant gloves, and things like that. And then, when, let's say you walk into the kitchen and you start cutting stuff left and right without using it yourself, right? You need to set the example, because if the employee sees that you care about safety, not only about them, but you also follow those rules, then that can only improve, right? That can only improve the likelihood of them saying, "Hey, wow, not only do they talk the talk, but they walk it as well. They walk that walk." So make sure that you are setting that example. And again, depending on the size of your company, as you get bigger, obviously that becomes more and more important. So if you're just starting out, either way, you could go to Kalosha's website, and you could download that at no cost, but you need to make it your own, right? You need to go through it and make sure that you get that safety plan for yourself. All right, Yamada. So mistake number 5.
All right, mistake number 5. Firing employees without doing your due diligence. So this is a mistake, I'd say probably the one that can definitely, if you're not careful, I wouldn't want to say put you out of business, but it can definitely be a very costly mistake, right? Because so many laws protect employees. And I know some of you may be joining from outside California as well. And a lot of times we talk a lot about California law because California law is the one that has affords the most protections for employees. It basically always sides, almost 99% of the time, sides with the employee rather than the employer, and all the responsibility goes to the employer to demonstrate or to prove, whatever it is that the employee's like disputing. So you definitely want to do your due diligence when it comes to firing employees. A few examples of things I see, right? When companies or businesses are firing employees without doing their due diligence. So for example, you'll fire an employee because, let's say whatever, they're not performing or whatever reason, you may fire the employee. We want to always make sure that that you get the employee's side of the story. A lot of times too, managers will say, this employee is not performing. I already told them once, I already told them twice. I've bent over backwards. I don't know what else to do. We just need to let them go. right? As the business owner, you should put on that hat, take a step back. A lot of times it's difficult for the managers, right? Because they are like frontline, they have a goal to achieve. They may be frustrated because this person's getting in the way of them getting those goals done, seeing the results that they want to see. But as the business owner, take a step back, right? And it's time to take a 360 look, 360 view of the situation. So giving the employee the opportunity to provide an explanation is always a good practice. This is where I see a lot of mistakes being done, is that I told them once, I told them twice, boom, we're just letting them go, they're fired. That person, never got asked, hey, what's going on? Your performance is like, subpar, it's deteriorating. They could have had a situation that could have been it could have been explained, right? Why they're not performing, right? I've seen it so many times, when a person is fired and their performance is not there, but it's because, their child is like fighting a terminal disease at the hospital. Well, now that person should have, been eligible for a protected leave, but now you fire them. Or, it's because they were going through a divorce maybe, and they were just not able to like pull through, right? Could have explained, right? I mean, doesn't justify it, but you can have those conversations with the employees. The point is, you want to be able to prevent situations from escalating that can be easily preventable by communicating. A lot of times that is, it sounds so easy, but that is where I see the mistakes being done, is we're not communicating. We're firing you. Sorry, sorry, not sorry, have a good life. But sometimes people do have a perfect explanation. And when we consider that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, who is the entity that investigates discrimination, harassment, and retaliation complaints from employees at the federal level, they increased their lawsuit filings by more than 50% in 2023, and that is expected to go up this year. You definitely want to make sure you do your due diligence, because you don't want to end up being investigated by the EEOC, right? It's just such a waste of time, such a waste of money to even have to settle, and you don't want to end up there. So good practice is do an investigation. What does that look like? I actually will be sharing an investigation checklist at the end of the webinar for those of you who stick around. But basically, you want to get the other side of the story, right? A manager comes to you, we need to fire this person. Talk to the employee. Hey, what's going on? I'm hearing XYZ from your manager. Tell me more. How can we support you? Hey, you're not, they're not performing up to par. You know what? Maybe they need some retraining. And I know this is going to seem like redundant and frustrating, but at the end of the day, if you end up in front of a judge and you're able to show, hey, you know what? We did like everything we could. We retrained this person, we provided them time off, we worked with them, we gave them like a notice, first one, a second one, a third. I mean, we just don't know what else to do, right? That just shows your due diligence as an employer. Hey, you're going above and beyond, like making sure this person preserves their job. Like that wasn't your intention to fire them. So making sure you do an investigation, get the facts, right? Get the facts. Don't get like, your manager came and told you XYZ, like find out what happened, get to the bottom of it, ask those questions from the employee, ask those questions, ask for proof. Like, okay, this person is not performing up to par. Give me some examples. So this person is chronically absent. Give me the dates, give me the times that they've been late, give me the time cards. Let's review them. Let's ask them why they were late, things like that. So I'll go over those. You'll get a more detailed description of what those questions should be on my checklist. But you want to make sure you do your due diligence. I have an example, and I mean, this just goes to show And I just hope everyone here like is never in that situation, right? But years back, when I used to work for that company, um, I used to work with small businesses for a larger company. And there was a client there who was in the construction industry. And, with construction, right, you have a timeline, you have a project you got to get done. And he had an employee that was a no call, no show for 3 days. And he said, hey, you guys have crafted my employee handbook. I have a policy that says I can fire. It's considered a voluntary resignation. I am letting them go. I've been calling and trying to get a hold of them for a week. So we haven't heard and we're letting them go. Okay, you have a business to run, we understand. Weeks later, they send they mail the final check and all the documentation right to the home. And then weeks later, they hear from the employee's wife that the employee had been hospitalized. He was in the hospital unconscious and he had passed away. And right, unfortunate situation, right? But it didn't end there until it ended months later when the wife started getting bills from the hospital and she didn't get paid. She didn't get paid for the life insurance because the employee, right? So because they terminated the employment and the insurance was tied to the employee's employment, it ended on that same day they fired the employee. It didn't cover anything further from that. And the life insurance didn't pay. And so now the wife, right now, a single mom, wife, like, guess what she's gonna do? She filed a lawsuit, and needless to say, she was able to recover, quite a lot. And so those are the situations you want to prevent, right? That's something that could have been easily preventable. I mean, unfortunate circumstances, but a phone call to the emergency contact, this is why you collect that information when you hire someone, right? You want to get that, this is why you want to get that process right from the beginning. Your next of kin, your emergency contact, call them and say, hey, I haven't heard from Joe Schmo. Is everything okay? Send a letter to the house, to the home address you have. We haven't heard from you for the last, week or two. If we don't hear from you, then your employment is going to be terminated. Please communicate with us. That could have prevented that lawsuit, right? So we want to make sure we do the due diligence, and also you have the documentation to back it up, right? So if someone has a chronic absenteeism problem, or someone has like subpar performance, you want to be able to show that, demonstrate that through either disciplinary action or performance evaluations or things like that. Documentation, right? So a lot of times too, what I see is like you'll have a disciplinary action or two, and then the evaluation is like, this employee is stellar. So how do you back up a termination, right? Like they just got kudos on the evaluation. But you had disciplinary actions prior to that. So what happened? So now you want to fire. We want to make sure everything is consistent, right? Everything is congruent and showing, painting the picture of what really is going on. All right, I said a lot. Here's the checklist. If you want to go ahead and scan that QR code, here's the checklist for the investigation. And again, I can't stress it enough, right? These are the kind of things you want to look out for. Prevent lawsuits, prevent claims, make sure you have all your processes in place. And, it's so important, as Rick was saying, to get your safety in place as well, right? Because safety workers' comp claims can add up and definitely put you like almost out of business. Like it can become part of the employee culture if you don't address those claims.
Xiomara, excuse me, the QR code isn't, I have a comment that it's not working.
Oh,
I don't know if you have another or.
All right. So if it's not working, I'm actually gonna email you the checklist. I apologize for that.
Is it on the other one as well? The next slide?
No, 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 no.
Oh,
I
okay.
will, I'll go ahead and I'll email it. When I send the recording and I send the slides, I'm also gonna include the checklist as well. I
Okay.
apologize for that.
Okay. Good.
But yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop those questions or call on, unmute yourselves. But again, Rick and I are available here to address any questions. I'm offering a free 30-minute consultation for any of you that may have certain situations you want to get an expert advice from. So there's the QR code, and that one is working. I did double and triple check that one this morning. But also my contact information. And if you have questions too about workers' comp insurance, definitely feel free to reach out to Rick. But I'd like to address any questions that any of you may have.
You want to send it to the next slide? So yeah, we thank everyone for joining us, and we hope that this gave you an overview, right, when it comes to mistakes to avoid in your small business and as you're growing. And if does anyone have any question at this time?
I'm checking the chat right now.
Yeah, so if you want to go back to the other one, just so that way they have our contact information. Thank you so much, Andrea, Tony, for joining us. Kai as well, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone. And if you, Xiomara, if you can put it to the previous one.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, if you have anyone that needs help with human resources, of course, consulting, and or on my side, it's more workers' compensation and safety. Um, when it comes to sexual harassment prevention, things like that as well, compliance training, then please give Xiomara or myself a call. You have our contact information there, and we'd be more than happy to answer it through email or phone. Either way works, and we'd like to set that up for to be able to help anyone that needs that. So
Absolutely. Yeah, so definitely feel free to reach out. If you have any questions, at any time, you have our contact information and then my Calendly as well. So feel free to like schedule anything on there at any time. But without, if there's no other questions, then I'd like to give everybody the gift of time. And thank you all for joining today. Hope you walked away with some key takeaways that you can implement in your business and or prepare yourself for hiring when you do hire employees. Thank you all, and have a nice day.
thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye.